God does in fact have a weak spot. There is Kryptonite that can destroy the Almighty. Let's do this. As you know, I'm an atheist, and I am so specifically because there is simply not enough evidence to prove the truth of religion. That said, though, if religion were to prove itself true, chances are very good I still would not be on board. Oh, that's not to say I wouldn't be a believer, but I just might not be on God's side.
I have heard atheists say that the Christian God is so immoral that even if they knew that he existed, they would not follow him. They would not worship him. They would basically turn against him.
And there are those of you out there who don't seem to believe that, or who seem to think that this is just foolish bravado on the part of an atheist.
Because I don't believe that statement. There's no way it can be true. And here's why. Imagine for a moment a person who is, right after they're born, is submitted to torture.
So, what? Forced to listen to William Shatner singing Barry Manilow karaoke?
And let's say that person is continually tormented, will continually experience immense pain.
Shatner karaoke, gotcha.
And then let's say, even when sleeping, that continues. Let's say that that person will, while sleeping, will still have horrendous nightmares. And then, when the person wakes up, the torture, the physical torture, continues.
Oh, physical torture. I see. I thought you meant psychological mental abuse. Shatner. Get the idea.
Imagine that, and imagine that goes on for a lifetime.
Yeah, lifetime of torture. Got it. Go on.
Can you imagine that? I seriously doubt it. Can you imagine that something like that for an entire year? What would people do to avoid it? What would you do to avoid punishment, to avoid torture for an hour? An hour straight. You would do a lot to avoid that.
Well, sure I would. But that doesn't mean that I only have one way to avoid it, now does it?
Some of you would probably kill the person to avoid being tortured for an entire year.
Yeah, I probably would. So, let's kill God.
Now imagine, what would you do to avoid an eternity of punishment, of torture?
Well, like I said, I'd get together a group of like-minded individuals, we'd go track down this God creature and kill the motherfucker. I mean, come on, what would you do? Become subservient? Why?
Your willingness to avoid infinite torture would basically also be infinite. I don't think there would be anything you would not do to avoid eternal punishment.
Well, maybe. But that doesn't mean that becoming a subservient minion of the Christian God is still the only method of avoiding that torture.
So, I don't believe it.
Oh, really? Well, consider this. What is the one thing that the Abrahamic God seems to need more than anything else? I'll tell you. Belief. Faith. Yeah, belief without evidence. No, this God can't prove its existence. Apparently that would be cheating somehow. No, this God needs your belief more than it needs any other single factor. Yeah, that's right. Now, consider, if this God is real, if the whole belief requirement is not just humans running a scam, then clearly this God feeds on faith. Clearly, the only thing keeping this God alive is your belief. Think about it. Think of all the other gods that used to apparently exist. Think of the Norse and Egyptian pantheons. Think of the South American gods, the ones that don't seem to have any power anymore, if they were ever real. What happened to them? That's right, people stopped believing. That seems to be the thing gods need more than anything else, is belief, faith. Yeah, belief without evidence, belief without proof fuels a deity. So if we wanted to kill God and avoid this eternal torment, all we have to do is get everyone to stop believing. That's it. That will kill God. Seems simple enough to me, and it seems a lot better than joining that asshole God's team, doesn't it? And of course, all this assumes that these gods were real to begin with, which I don't believe.
Now let me get to another point.
Well, if you must.
I'm pretty sure you have heard Christians say before, atheists, deep down in their heart, they know that God exists. Well, what I just said is just defeats that logically.
Here's the problem. On the one hand, yeah, it does. But on the other hand, this is not a logical issue. And it never was. This is a pretty emotional issue. The fact is that a lot of people can't really wrap their heads around the notion of there being eternal torture, or there being an afterlife, or there being a God. I mean, we can't even wrap our heads really around the infinity of space, and we have evidence of that. I mean, it's really difficult for some people to even picture the entire globe or bits of their own city if they live in a large enough one. I mean, there are just certain concepts that are very difficult for the human brain to grasp, to really latch onto, to be able to fully comprehend, to viscerally understand them as well as intellectually. And so, when we talk about something like eternal torture, well, it's pretty easy to wave it off. I mean, okay, granted, I'm waving it off logically as well as emotionally, but still, I mean, you cannot say that just because we don't believe, that then proves that we don't believe. It doesn't really work like that, because there's still the intellectual versus the emotional component. I mean, it's entirely possible that we've intellectually discarded something and not emotionally discarded it. I mean, there are plenty of people out there who have come out of religion, who were raised religious, who have never really been able to shake that sense of the afterlife, or someone looking over their shoulder, or the concept of sin, or any of that stuff. No matter how intellectually they know that God doesn't exist, there's still that visceral component. I've met these folks. I have the fortune to not be one of them, but they exist. So you may have logically disproved what atheists do or don't believe, but you have not actually accounted for every aspect of this particular argument. You do have to count in the emotional part. I mean, I hate to say that, but, well, it's the truth.
Any human being would do any number of things to avoid infinite torture. And do you really think anyone would be so, not just stupid, but insane infinitely insane actually, to just say, well, I know that I will be punished if I don't do this and that, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
You see, on the one hand, I really wish it worked that way. I really do. And in a perfect, logical, black and white world, it would. But that's not the world we live in, and those are not the psyches we have. We are emotional creatures, and there are things that we doubt that we should believe, there are things we believe we should doubt, and everything in between. And so I'm sure that there are people out there who are looking at this sort of modified Pascal's wager, which is essentially what this is, and who go, well, there might be a God, there might not, there might be a hell, there might not, but I'm erring on this side instead of that side. And the side they're erring on happens to be the one that thinks there's no God and no hell. But, that just means that they're not scared enough of hell to be scared into believing in God. That's all it means. And, that's human nature. Just because they have chosen one over the other, that doesn't mean their choice is purely logical, which is what it would have to be for the scenario you're proposing to work. And like I say, I can't believe I'm actually saying this because it sounds like I'm advocating for the side I'm against. But the truth is that I'm on the side of reality, even if it's not the side that I wish were true. And the side of reality is that humanity does not make these choices in a logical frame. I'm not discussing what is or is not real right now. I'm talking about the way humans make that choice. And the way humans make that choice is as emotional as it is logical, like it or not.
So now that this is out of the way, no. Atheists definitely, genuinely do not believe that this God exists.
Well, on that at least we can agree. I mean, we aren't just denying God because we want to. We really genuinely don't see enough evidence for there being a God, and so we point to the claims made by theists and say, well, this is full of shit. If you were to present us with the evidence that a God really did exist in such a way that we could verify it without needing faith, you might find a few converts, at least in the belief department, if not the loyalty department. Anyway, until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Please take the time to rate this video. And hey, if you dig what I do, subscribe. And please visit my Zazzle store, where you'll find all kinds of BionicDance merchandise. People not subscribing to BionicDance is one sign of the apocalypse. Save us all. Subscribe now.